Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of What They Don't Tell You. I'm your host, Jacob, along with the other host,
Aiden. We're here to bring you our perspective on news, facts, culture, what we believe to be true about them.
Alright guys, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about 3 different topics. It's also Charlie Kirk's birthday today, when we're recording. But we'll be posting this later in the week. Friday. So, new schedule. We got Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm trying to remember that still. But we're going to deal into 3 different topics. We're going to be talking about Trump and his Middle East Gaza conflict resolution. There's allegedly peace now. Allegedly. We'll hopefully keep it that way. We're also going to be talking about the music industry and just why it's just a headache and just we should just nuke it. Because, yeah, why not? And then we're also going to be talking about Benny Johnson, the YouTuber, got threatened earlier last week, I believe. And we're just going to talk about, like, where's the line? Dude, it's a dude in his basement making videos. Like, not like that's allegedly the concept, but it's a little nicer than his basement. But that's the concept. So, and you want to kick us off with our first topic, Trump with the peace resolution.
Yeah. So obviously, as you guys know, there's basically never peace in the Middle East. Probably not going to get into a huge history. No, but it worked. So as you guys know, long history of conflict in the Middle East, always will be. It's kind of. Actually, guys, if you want proof for the Bible, go back and read about Abraham's two different sons that went on to. I mean, they're both linked to Abraham, and we got the Muslim people here and the Israelis here, and so they are always at odds with each other. And it's shown in the Bible that that the Muslim people will always be at odds with the rest of the world. So we can see that in the Bible. Now, that being said, Trump has just negotiated peace, the best peace, only peace that we can have.
Make America peaceful again.
So we're very grateful for that. Hamas has returned 20 hostages. So that's honestly a lot of people dead, obviously, but incredible that those families get to be reunited with their loved ones, and we're very grateful for that. So I don't know how much.
They still haven't announced what they're gonna do with the remains of the ones that did not make it. Allegedly, they're gonna try and work something out with getting those to the families, but there's been nothing announced on that so far, by the way. So
yeah, okay. So I know a lot of countries put pressure on Hamas and Gaza to agree with this peace deal. I know that, and kudos to them. Obviously, that's a big deal. We need that kind of pressure to be constantly put on. We know that Trump flew out to Israel for the ceremony. He got a standing ovation, I believe, from the Israeli government. And obviously they're very happy with this. They didn't want this to keep going as much as they don't want a terrorist organization near them. They can't, but it's not. They don't want to have to keep fighting, and it's war is draining on everything, economy, military, all those things. So it's really tough for them, obviously, but I'm sure they're just grateful to have that peace negotiated, as seen by Trump's standing ovation. Obviously, we know he did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. Jacob, what do you have to say about that? Like, what do you think about that?
So I think, again, do we even know who's the head over those things? Do we know? Aiden, find that for me real quick if you can, please. And so again, I think it really comes down to people just don't like Trump. We've talked about Trump derangement syndrome a ton. And I think it's a real thing because people just don't like him. No matter what he does, he could save the pigs from the mud. I don't know what he could do, but whatever he does, they would still find a way to hate on him. And I think it doesn't matter what he'll do. Maybe eventually, maybe once he's dead, people will see, oh, this guy was actually not an awful person. Maybe. I really don't know.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to interrupt you. I just think, yeah, I knew that there were always 5, and Nobel Peace Prize judges. They're elected by Norway's parliament, I guess, itself. And so they've got a few people here that decide. So they have Jorgen Friednes. I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher some Norwegian names here, even though I'm supposed to be Norwegian partially. Isle Toye, Anne Enger, Kristen Clement, Gry Larson. So they are the ones that decide who gets the Nobel Peace Prize. And
do we know their stances on things?
I think it's probably to them. There's some that really like. I think there's 1 or 2 that appreciate what Trump's done. Obviously, guys, this is not the first time he's negotiated peace deals in the Middle East. I don't think people comprehend how hard that is to do. I mean, honestly, the Middle East we're such a new country. We still see war very. We resolved it. We won or whatever. They lost. Okay,
And
now
then a week later, it
a
happens
week
here.
later we're friends or something. You know what I mean? But the Middle East is very. I'm waiting a century, but we will strike back at you because of something you did 200 years ago, which is
Exactly.
they're old countries. They think very far into the future. The terrorist organizations think very far into the future. They are not we're a day by day country. We're rock and roll. You know what I mean? Kind of just like, okay, what happened today? What happened today? Whereas they are very, 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 very future thinking. Very, okay, you did this to me now. I'll strike back 100 years later with an entire new generation. Like that. Like that's how they think. And so to us, it's like, oh, okay, yay, we got peace. To them, it's like. It's kind of a big deal for in the moment, you know what I mean?
Right.
to negotiate anything like that. So very impressive that Trump was able to do that. Very grateful to him. I think it's still funny to me that he didn't get the prize.
No, was he nominated? Like, how
I'm
does
sure
that?
he was
How does
nominated.
how does the
It's-
nominations work? Like, who does that? Can I
he was,
say
he
that?
was
Can I
nominated.
just-
They do not. I know that there's some that appreciate what Trump's doing here. I think it was Ayatoye or something. I don't know. It's a tough name for me to pronounce. I know that they. I was researching this a little bit last night, but I didn't fully get to all of it. And I mean, obviously, we know Barack Obama won it in 2009.
Mhm.
So, and I'm sure Trump would like to win it. Guys, this is the second time he's done this and still hasn't gotten it. There's a few of them have criticized Trump, and so there are a few that probably outvoted and said, no, we're not gonna have Trump win it. Essentially, we don't like this. But Toye attended Trump's presidential inauguration earlier,
Okay.
when Trump got elected, and said, to quote him, "effing great party." So no, he's very appreciative of the MAGA movement, but there's several that have criticized him for cutting U.S. aid, and the women especially talk about women and human rights issues that don't really exist. Here's the thing: they're coming from potentially from Norway, maybe around the world, but looks like a few of them are actually from Norway. It's weird to think that people in other countries are very invested in our politics. A lot of them are, but that also doesn't mean they understand it to the fullest extent, and they probably just see headlines. A lot of headlines. I don't always like to say this, but they are dominated by left-wing news organizations. So when these people are seeing headlines and different things, they're seeing all the bad things about Trump. So I don't know how much they know actually about him. I don't. Again, that's not to criticize them. Hopefully, they did a lot of research before deciding who would get this prize. But to me, I think
they're
he's
not
probably the
living
most
in it, it's
deserving in the
kinda-
world. It is
Oh,
different.
100%.
It's different.
It
I
is
think
different
he's
'cause it's
deserving
like-
of it because he negotiated this peace. They just can't rationalize that. I don't know. And he's a controversial figure in the sense that not everyone agrees with him, whether or not they should.
And I think-
That's a different argument, but they don't.
I think-
so.
I don't know if it, like, again, I don't think it should matter how controversial you are. If you did something that's worthy of it, then you should be, if you get, you know what I mean? But I think from an outside perspective, it's like, okay, you're not in my, I'm like, I don't follow you, you're not my president. So if you're like not crazy into it and you're like, whatever, I don't know if it's, you know what I mean? Like, if it's kind of different for our perspective, like, holy crap, our president just did, like, got, like,
Negotiated peace.
You know what I mean?
It's
But,
such
like,
a big story, though, that I feel like
that's my thing. It's like-
valuable to how they decide.
Mhm.
I didn't want to get too much into this, so we can kind of just retract to what we're doing. But I'm kind of like, you know what? If they're gonna give out the Nobel Peace Prize to like anyone now that isn't, I don't want to say isn't worthy. I'm sure there's some great candidates out there that I just don't know enough about. It's the same thing. We can make the same argument for me, like, well, you don't know enough about other people's politics, other people's good, So
Yeah.
you can make that argument, and I can agree with you there. I don't know enough about these other people, but to have peace in the Middle East, not once, but twice, and continue to advocate for that, continue to be a great, means our president, essentially a diplomat in that way too, finding a diplomatic way to bring the two sides to a resolution that they can agree on,
Right.
is a pretty big deal. So I just think, I don't know everyone, but I'm like, okay, to have peace from years of war and terroristic actions from one side, and to finally be like, hey, enough's enough. I think that's probably the biggest deal in the world right now, unless someone else just saved thousands and thousands of lives, potentially. I don't know.
Don't ask me, bro. I mean, who knows? But I agree with you there. I think I don't know. It just depends from what perspective you're looking at it, who you are. Overall, I think it should always be, if you like basic facts, if you saved thousands of lives and like actually did something that's notable for everybody, like I don't think if whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that doesn't matter. If like I think you should still see this as a win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think
There's a
Democrats would probably be
potential.
like-
I don't know fully the full layers of this. There's a potential that he didn't make the deadline for nomination after Cambodia,
saw
Israel,
that.
and
So-
Palestine nominated him. But I think
What it is it's October is when they release the winners.
hmm
It's September to January, or January to September is
Okay.
nominations.
Yeah.
And then October is when they release it. If it's the 14th when we're recording this, I believe it was like a 5th, if I want to say, maybe a couple days later, but it was like I don't know if he made it or not. So that's the question.
Yeah, I don't. Says it's after the January 31st deadline, so they're not valid for 2025. So that could just be the reason.
So maybe next year we don't.
Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know. But they said. But here's the thing: they want him to change his policies. As I was kind of reading more, that's where I say like some of them agree, some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
They claim the reason is that he's dismantling the international world order that the award committee cherishes, but not all of them do.
Okay.
Like, and that was according to I think MSN or something. I don't know,
Right.
but they. Yeah, so they cite that as a reason. Again, I don't know how I feel about all that. I think he should still be an acceptable nomination just for that.
Yeah, at least taken very, very good look at.
Yes, I hope that they're looking at it through a critical lens and not just like, well, it's Trump. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So we don't know. We don't know what their process is. To kind of get back on track to what honestly, what's really the most important here is 20 people got to go home. That's really good. That's really cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
After so long, I cannot imagine the relief for those families, but still the devastation for the ones that weren't the only 20 people, sadly.
And if you look at it like seriously, only 20 people, whatever. First off, I think it's cool to see that we're like that they're going to the lengths to even help those 20 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also, it's not just those 20 people. It's also the thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands that saved that possibly could have been killed.
True.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Over time. Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's the way you really got to look at it. A lot of people are just gonna look at the headlines. Oh, 20 people. That's nothing. We could have just, you know what I mean?
But if
like,
you drag it out longer and longer, you get soldiers that die. Yeah. No.
Exactly. Overall, it's a good thing. I think that
For sure.
again. I think.
And every human life's valuable. If there's 20, we're gonna take the 20. You know.
Yeah. Right.
That's
exactly.
absolutely. We just always
So-
hope it'd be more. It's just what it comes out to. But
Think that's anything else you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
I mean, we just need to focus on keeping that peace because again, it's the history of conflict and religious differences, absolutely, which I don't blame. People blame religion for war, but I always laugh when I see that because yes, in the Middle East there are good reasons for that, but that's because they're so ideologically opposed from one another, and again in the Bible it says his hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand will be against him. So
Right.
well, he's probably going to be fighting. Honestly, that Muslim culture, I'm not trying to like denounce all Muslims. There's been, and I just read a book about an incredible story about one who came to Christianity, but it is intended to be a violent religion. I mean, it is. So we need to be careful. We need to keep a critical eye out for more potential for conflict in the Middle East and for any terrorist organizations or acts that may occur. You know, George Washington said that we should be very careful in the entanglement we get with other countries and the alliances even we make with other countries because it may not be prudent of us to continue those alliances when we don't have the same values. So he talked in I believe it was his farewell address where he talks about how as a country we should be careful with prolonged alliances because we may only be feigning the same value or that same end goal that we're looking for when really we're not of the same mind as that country we're allied with. I think a lot of it probably comes from the fact that the founders were very classically trained and they looked at especially in Rome. And they were very classically trained, so looking at the old Roman writers who saw that the fall of Rome happened through, obviously, overexpansion, but government force in other countries, while not overexpansion, is applying some kind of extended influence into other countries, and then to have those values come to us, and those things that we may not agree with be put upon us, and with those other countries, I think is kind of what the founders were worried about. So people like Tacitus, Cicero. I mean, all those people who recorded the old Roman historians recorded that, saw that as an issue, and I think that's partially where they were influenced from. Interesting to see. So you just need to be careful with how we engage with other countries. But I'm very grateful to see this peace deal happen. Hopefully it lasts, and I think that's all I have.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I drop your thoughts down in the comments below on that topic, guys. And so we're gonna hit into our next topic, which is we just saw last week the YouTuber Benny Johnson got threatened, and the threatener was arrested. I'll give you the story real quick, and then we'll give our thoughts. So what happened was there was a letter sent to Benny Johnson, and the letter made it very clear that this man was wanting to murder Benny Johnson, his wife, and his kids, and they were arrested just a few days later. And we do not know the charges yet, but we will hopefully see something in the near future. Aiden, what do you have on this?
Yes, the guy's name was George Russell Isbell Jr. of San Diego, and he mailed a threatening communication to Benny Johnson, according to, again, MSN. In the letter, basically, Isbell, quote, called him a prostrating Trump bootlicker, said he needed to be exterminated, and he was not giving up his freedom for worm crap like you. He said, here's hoping the American flag strangles the life out of you. Maybe someone will blow your head off, we can hope. Planning any public engagements. Love to see your head explode and the blood stain the concrete red. What a sight. Arrested?
Dang.
Federally. So, if this guy's gonna go away for a long time if he gets convicted here, as he should. It's just, again, it just comes back to, it's all just disgusting to see how violent people have gotten.
And
so regardless, it's disgusting to see how bad it's gotten. I mean, I think, again, it's a lack of any kind of virtue or morals, which is a really big deal in this country. I don't know how much I even have to say on this other than it's just exhausting. It really is exhausting. I'm tired of having to even come out and be like, hey, someone else got threatened, someone else is gonna someone wants this person to get shot. It shows, though, that we didn't fight this properly when this started to take over, this ideology. Like, we weren't aware of it or cognizant of it up until COVID, probably, and it was being instituted long before that.
And I want to ask, like, we might not have taken care of it right away, but was it? I think did we still go about it the right way, in the fact that we didn't want to be the ones to quote unquote shoot first, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is, it's not fair, because when do we if we're wanting to be the good guy, we're not going to shoot first, but then you shoot and then we lose somebody like Charlie Kirk. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Figuratively speaking, we don't want to be the ones that shoots back first, fights back, right? But in that, like, in the sense of when do we try to put a stop to it? Do we want to be the first ones to?
We tried to find that common ground, and then that didn't work. Yeah. So I mean, I think it is probably it was obviously an education issue. They figured out a way to weaponize the education system. I disagree more and more with public school teaching. Obviously, I can tell you, even in my own experience, just with being online at Christian schools, that it's not good. I mean, honestly, I'm saying that I don't think that sometimes they know even what's in their textbooks. Their textbooks are dictated to the teachers, and they can't do a whole lot about that. But there's just stuff that's subtly implemented to take away ideals, because I think there's this idea that, and I was just reading, because I'm at a conservative Christian school online, and in the book it talks about, well, like, we address, like, Washington. We don't address Washington owning slaves enough, but we address, like, all the good things he did, and we need to be very critical. And I was kind of like, wait a minute. I was like, I understand that. Terrible that he had that. At the same time, there's never going to be a perfect person. There's going to be people, very flawed people. That doesn't take away from what they did. Also, the reason we don't teach tiny children that initially is because we're trying to teach children, at least I believe, and as I'm reading more, I think I ground this. We're teaching children ideals, right? We're not teaching them, like, well, you shouldn't kill people, but look at all these different instances of where, like, it was okay. We don't teach them that, right? Because that's not, like, the acceptable way. We teach them, no, you don't kill people. Like, that's bad. That's inherently bad. We teach them the ideal of what should be and the virtue of what should be, and then we're like, and then as they get older, we're like, well, look at this critical view, and now you're old enough to realize, hey, Washington did a lot of good things, and then here's the bad things, and here's the flawed people that we have that still founded our country.
Right. I'm not necessarily saying he was right in the sense, but he didn't treat them in ways that we see the. There
are differences too. Yep.
There are
in everyone.
differences. I mean, not saying it's right, and there's probably still not. There's like, we can deep dive into that another day, but like,
right.
There was definitely differences that you've got to look at. There's a lot, and that happens a lot of nowadays.
Yeah.
With Trump and with a lot of people.
That doesn't make it right at all. No. Slavery's a atrocious thing, but I still see like, okay, but you'd have every single person in the history of the world has been flawed except for one man. So
right.
you're never gonna find that balance that you're looking for, that perfection, that this like, because it's almost like they're looking for the ideal, but they make very clear to point out that everything is not ideal. I'm like, yeah, of course it isn't. But we give kids our ideals because that's what we want them to follow. We don't want them to follow, well, it's subjective here, here's this, here's all the issues. Like, there's a reason we teach them the ideals. As they get older, we might be able to introduce them to that. And so when they were taught, like, oh, let's weaponize the school system, then we get all these ideas that, oh, this person's evil, this person has bad thing. It's all these things that over time, we've talked about this before, did a better articulation of it. But basically, in order to stop the violence, because I've seen people like, oh, we need to stop violence, Well, how are you going to do that? The only way to do that is it's always going to come back to how your children are being educated, because it's the next generation that has to deal with it. And so if you're just going to keep them in the same public school system, if you're going to keep them thinking the same way, if you're going to keep them being taught by the same people that teaches, oh, you're a victim, this side is oppressing you, they're evil, they're fascist, they're Hitler, then of course, over time, when they're also taught that morals are subjective, they're going to say, okay, there's one of two things. Either we have cultural subjectivity, which is that culture decides what's right and wrong, and so they're going to say, well, our culture says it's not wrong, at least right now, to go and kill one of these influencers. Okay, so then you have that. Or you have individual relativism, which is even worse, I would argue, that says that, oh, it's your personal beliefs and personal views and morality that decide that, and if they personally decide based on their foundationalist perspective or Constitution's perspective that it's not wrong for me to go kill them, then they're going to go do that. So either way, you have these people that have a subjective view of what's right and wrong, and so then they can say, well, okay, it's not always wrong to kill someone so long as they're a fascist and they're evil and they're oppressing me and they're oppressing all people and down with this and down with that. So yeah, you're going to have those people. So it all comes back to the education system, and it all comes back to how they were raised. This kid probably that was trying, or at least made the threat to Benny that he was going to kill him, was probably raised in that way. I would say that I wouldn't say it's even a stretch to say that. So it's sad to see what's happening.
Force this kind of stuff like they did with Tyler Robinson. They were saying, oh, he was a MAGA Republican. No, he wasn't. You gotta look at, like, there's a lot of things that lead back to this, and it's like, again, the school system starts with it, and then it's the parents, how they're raising their kids, what they believe in, how they believe in it, and it comes back to the school system, comes back to there's no such thing as subjective morality, and there's just we gotta put a stop to it.
Absolutely. And I know we say it every time, but it's just because it all tracks back to that. And it's and so obviously we're praying for Benny and his family, but to add to that in a sense, I just think it's important that we understand it. I want to say I would also be just as harsh on someone who was a right wing that would be making these kind of disgusting statements. I would be just as hard on a conservative like that. I think the reason, and I'm going to say this, and I do believe this is true, I think the reason we don't see that with the right side is they obviously don't believe morals are subjective, at least for the most part, because it takes an element of critical thinking and looking past the headlines to be able to come to the conclusion that not everything on the conservative movement is evil. They're just so you have to have a little bit of that critical thinking to actually make it to the conservative side. At least I want to say that. There are still some that obviously blindly follow, but for the most part, the headlines are against conservatism. So you have to, if you're willing to reach past those, you're already probably thinking a little more critically than perhaps your peers are. So I think that there's that element to it too. That shows that if you have that element of critical thinking, that also means you are probably, I don't want to say you're more likely to, but you're more likely to eventually come to the conservative side because we're right. I'm just gonna say that. Not on everything. I don't necessarily agree with every single little detail. We're gonna have disagreements in our party too. But I agree with everything that aligns in a Christian sense, in those value-based senses. I definitely agree. So.
And I wanna say one thing real quick is like we did see this a little bit, and we personally actually made a statement that we said we were actually, when Biden was diagnosed with prostate cancer, we said we were sad for him, we were praying for him.
Yeah,
we saw some people
that's a normal thing to
that
do.
were like, yes, we're glad he has this cancer. Yay,
Yeah.
he's gonna be. And we both don't. I'd say we both don't agree with that. You know what I mean? That's where it comes.
And that's where we
factors,
still both parties have the stupid ones, right? But I would just say that liberals right now tend to have
a little more.
the very radicalized sense. We haven't seen this a lot, but in the past, and we got to bring it back together. We got to bring virtue back to our country. I honestly do believe that. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a country very long.
Right. Well, I think that'll wrap up that topic. Again, praying for Ben Johnson and his family. It's still a scary situation. I know they took care of it, but there's still millions of other people that are hoping the same things. So our last topic for today, we're just going to be talking about kind of the same kind of stuff, but in a different sense of just the music industry in general in Hollywood, just how corrupt it is and how just disgusting it is. So Aiden, you ready for this?
As ready as I can. Yeah. So guys, let's start us off here. I think the biggest issue is the influence the music industry actually has, right? All the lyrics that you listen to, the things you decide to put in your head, the things you decide to watch and listen to, all influence. And we've covered, obviously, someone like Diddy, who already, we could probably make an argument, okay, not a great person regardless if you're listening to it, but way more corrupt even than some lyrics that we disagree with and find immoral. So just to see how the music industry can cover that up, obviously we've seen... I mean, I probably don't know the half of it, how bad it's gotten, but these are people that children should never be exposed to, but probably are. And then someone like Taylor Swift, even recently, terrible, went off the deep end. And then you have little girls that look up to her, right, as this.
I came into a class for co-op the other day, and a couple, they were 12, and they were listening to her new album.
Yeah. We're not going to get into that. We try to keep this a PG. And honestly, I would never listen to her in general. So I literally only know headlines and the basics from people like Benny, not Benny specifically, but a lot of people that we follow have been talking about that. So that bothers me deeply, actually. Kids should not be listening to this. She's not someone you should look up to. No one in that music industry is. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but they're all stupid. And I know people are going to get mad at me for that. I don't care. I'm way past caring because it's more about about my value for the kids than it is about your opinion. And I know that there's a lot of people that actually hate her new album. It's funny though because I think it's a lot of the liberals that are freaking out about it because it's the issues with it. But I think conservatives should be too. I think there's just a basic issue. Maybe this is a common ground issue that we can find, except we have two very different perspectives on why it's wrong.
And I think we could come back to talk about how the Sydney Sweeney thing came about, because there was so many different things. It was okay,
I don't
the conservatives were happy, but should they be, you know what I mean?
I don't want the conservatives to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, this is a good thing because the liberals hate it. That's stupid and arguably just as messed up.
Not even necessarily that, just how they said they were oh, hot women in advertisement again instead of the gay people. You know what I mean? It's what
I don't find it to be right. I always say call back to virtue. I mean, Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics talks about people chasing, or their highest goal being, I've said this before, reason done rightly. And then in other books and reasonings by him, he talks about virtue, and he believed courage was the highest virtue. Courage to speak out in this case. Charlie actually talked about this a little bit too. But courage is the, at least Aristotle believed is the highest virtue. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I mean, Paul says maybe love is the highest virtue, right? But regardless of that, though, it's necessary to be courageous, and it is moral cowardice actually to do the opposite, which is to not call this out. Mm-hmm. So as a society and as all movements should be, is to call this out as wrong and to get your kids freaking away from it, please, for the love of all that's good.
And the thing is, it's presented towards kids. That's the thing.
Yeah, it is. And so she's disgusting. I'm sorry. I never had respect for her before, really, but more so just because it's okay, whatever. Go away. You're annoying. But now I've lost all respect entirely.
That
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to music in the last 20 years. It's probably the same thing that happened to all the, just being taught a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it does have to do, if we want to get into the spiritual side of things, it's like, when you start to frame it this way, Satan has a goal to influence and manipulate a lot of people. He's not omnipresent like God is. So what's a good way to make sure that you can influence a large group of people? Social media has done that very well, but if you put yourself in the shoes of how are you going to manipulate the most people, it wouldn't be trying to find little individuals and manipulate them like you might have done in the old times, or like high powerful kings and stuff. It's like, okay, what's the most influential thing? Well, movies reach a lot of people. So what if you subtly just start to dismantle virtue? What if you go over to the music industry and you subtly start to implement all these things, and over time, now there's complete dominance of it in such an evil and disgusting culture in those industries that he can just spread it to as many people as possible. And because it influences everyone, right? In our American culture, we put a heavy influence on pop culture, and so everyone is at least subtly influenced by it. Everyone at least knows about it, and it's a great way to manipulate and deceive people. Because I'm just gonna be honest, Satan doesn't need you to follow like him. He doesn't care. He just needs you to miss the mark. He just needs you to miss the mark.
Exactly.
If you miss the bullseye by an inch, that's good enough for him.
Because that's still
if you miss that accepting Jesus is necessary for you to get to heaven, and that you're going to follow him, that's all he needs you to miss. That's it. That's the one thing he needs to miss.
It's funny you bring up the bullseye thing, because the word sing comes from an archer term. It's how much you are away from the bullseye. That's the sing of your shot.
Well, there you go.
Even if the bullseye's here and you miss it by an inch, that's still
not good enough.
A little bit of sin. That's not good enough unless you're right on the bullseye. Is where
and obviously, guys, we're always missing the mark, and that's why we need Jesus, right? But the idea of this is that, you just need to miss it a little bit. So what if every song contains something that just draws you a little further? And that's convicting in a big way. I think as Christians, we can take a lot of things critically and still enjoy certain things, movies produced, that we might not fully agree with. But I do think we need to be aware, because and I would always encourage you guys to go read C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis' Abolition of Man covers how subtly in this little book on English grammar, it dives into some philosophical concepts, especially nihilism, that subtly, ever so subtly, because the kid is not thinking philosophically when he goes to read this book. He's thinking, oh, it's grammar. But it subtly implements these philosophical principles that lie dormant in that child's brain, but when he's old enough to have that worldview, those things are going to shape him a little bit. He's going to make some assumptions that he didn't even know were in the back of his mind, and that's what the argument that Lewis makes. And eventually this leads to humanity is gone. Right? Exactly. Humanity is that right reason done virtuously.
And you've seen this a lot. Like, I've seen this in my college classes tons of times. They're just little snippets. It's not that much,
but it's just a little bit
that they're gonna get you into, and then that it keeps building on itself, and then eventually, like for people that aren't grounded, are gonna start thinking this way because they're hearing this in the back of their mind, and then these are where they get their views from. This is where they get subjective morality is a thing. It's like, where'd you come up with that? I remember my professor said it one time. You know exactly. So
it's
that's where it's coming from. And again, that's the education system, but it's in a higher level. But it's like it's still they're putting snippets in, they're putting their agenda in just a little bit here and there until it all comes together.
And again, that's external. That would be external justification. I'm justified in my belief because of the people around me that shaped it, essentially, not because I intrinsically, or not intrinsically, I shouldn't say that. That'd be inherent. But internally rationalize and understand why it's right or wrong. They're not doing that on their own, which is why I say the conservative movement has more critical thinkers overall, because you have to be to reach that point, and you have to, and if you're going to be critically thinking, you have an internal view of, oh, I'm justified because of this. There's just
right.
There's those two views, internal and external. External is going to be based on other people and the shaping around you. Internal is going to be I actually know or am capable of knowing why I believe this. So I think it's important to remember that. But you either have this spectrum where you're going to fall away, and over time you're going to become more animalistic because we've taken away all virtue that we used to believe in. That's just what C.S. Lewis calls a tale. Or you're going to go the other way, hopefully, and then see what people, like Tacitus in the old Rome understood, and Aristotle understood, that you have to have virtue in your society, and eventually that virtue and the truth combined give you this really strong foundational core set of beliefs and values that you're going to hold, that's going to improve your life. and that's what Aristotle believed, and that's what he would argue actually makes you human. So and then we see that embodied in Jesus Christ. Plato believed that the best way to live a life, to have a good life, was to align yourself fully with the forms, which were considered the purest thing. Virtues could be considered universals, which are, so they exist outside of time or human rationale. They exist regardless of whether you believe in them or not. And the full alignment of that is embodied in Jesus Christ. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If he is the embodiment of virtue, then to align yourself, as Plato says, fully with the forms and with value and virtue, is to align yourself with Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
So if you guys understand that, I please type that in the comments.
And when
Christ is king. I mean, honestly, we need to come back to that every single time.
I agree with that. And if you're, and that's whenever you have to look at, like, when these education systems and these people are taking away these, like, they're throwing snippets at that, oh, that's not necessarily the way, you could also get to that way. You might not think that that's, like, blasphemy or whatever, but it is, because they're doing it in a certain way that people aren't going to really acknowledge it, and then that's throwing their agenda and their little snippets here and there to eventually throw them away from that.
Yeah, and Swift obviously went a lot further than a snippet.
Exactly.
I'm disgusted with her behavior, quite honestly. Get your kids away from her, please, if you're seeing this.
I agree. And I think one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, unless you have a couple more points you want to hit on, but this happens to a lot of things, a lot of movies, a lot of songs, a lot of entertainment. We see this everywhere. And this brings up a point, and again, I think we can go into this a lot more. I want to do a full episode on all the deep snippets we can get into.
Yeah.
This is just a little bit of a
overview.
A little bit of overview. We can definitely hit on this a full episode. We'll probably hopefully do so in the future. But I want to say that with Halloween coming up, it is October. One of the topics I want to hit on, this is probably going to be a full episode, maybe a topic on our closer to Halloween episodes. I want to talk about is, like, with the horror movies and decorations in Halloween, what is the real basis behind it? Is this just for fun? Is this a thing that, it's just marketing people are coming up with, or is there something more spiritual behind it? Are they throwing these snippets into these movies for fun and for just the scream, or is there something more behind it? So I want to talk about that in a later video. This will probably be, I'm assuming that'll be the 26th, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. We're posting 3 videos a week now, so we'll try and get it in within one of those, around the 26th to the 28th. But yeah, and anyway, anything else you want to hit on before we wrap it up?
Just the scariest thing this Halloween season is new albums. So stay away, guys.
Yeah, guys. Well, I think that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below what your thoughts are. And Christ is King. We'll see you in the next video.
See ya.
Peace out.
Peace.